This publication was born in 2005. And in 2005, it was a magazine that had very high ideals about changing South Africans' lives. It was a magazine that's focus was on empowering citizens through information and specifically through education. So this is it. This is the very first edition of Vuk'uzenzele. Volume 1, number 1, October 2005. It's in relatively good condition. I've been looking after it. As a custodian, it stays in the safe so nothing happens. But this is the history, this is the birthplace, this is where this publication comes from. So the whole idea and the title, Vuk'uzenzele, was really about equipping people with the information that could make a difference in their own lives. But it depended on citizens themselves taking active participation in making that change. So this whole idea of Vuk'uzenzele, getting up and doing it for yourself, is embedded in the culture of this publication. I want to show you something else. Because the publication has changed, right? Over the years, it's gradually been altering its shape as the readers have changed, as the demographics of the country have changed, and more importantly, as the services of government have changed. So in 2011, a very bold decision was taken. The decision was, it's not possible for us to reach every South African if we stay in the magazine format. The only way that this publication is going to grow and reach more people is if we go from magazine, and at that point, the magazine came out every 2 months, to a monthly newspaper where we could increase the actual footprint, increase the publication run of the newspaper so that it can reach more South Africans. And something else also happened that was quite important. This whole idea of talking to all South Africans in their own languages really began to take shape. But also, by going to the newspaper format, what it allowed us to do was to focus on regionalization. So we could take the newspaper out into the furthest rural areas in the far-flung parts of South Africa, where people hadn't had access to newspapers, because what had happened in the intervening time was that the mainstream newspapers were reducing their distribution to the peri-urban and rural areas. So Vuk had a really important role. This is the publication that kept South Africans in touch with what the work of government was. What is it that the government that they had chosen through the elections, what is it that it was delivering for them? And it covers the themes of government, the 5 pillars. So it talks about safety, talks about health, talks about education, talks about the work that we are doing in terms of making sure that the rural economies of South Africa remain thriving economies that people can make a living in. Well, last year we had a lot of discussion about what shape should this publication take. We've been talking about maybe that it's time that it has a refresh, it needs a new look, maybe a burst of energy to reflect the fact that the demographics have changed yet again. South Africa is increasingly younger. How do we integrate Vuk'uzenzele with digital platforms? How do we make sure that it's available on things like Facebook? What do we do on Twitter? And so on. So we had a brown paper session. A brown paper session is exactly that. We just take brown paper and you cover a whole wall with brown paper, and you get a team of enthusiastic young people and you ask them lots of questions and you challenge them to come up with new ways of doing things. And this new layout, this template, this format came out of that brown paper session. This is the Braille edition. I don't know any other newspaper in South Africa that has a Braille edition. Everybody can take their publication online. Anyone can take their publication onto Twitter. That's easy. But we are one of the few publications, I think, in the world, not just in South Africa, that has a Braille edition.
We've changed shapes. You talk about shapes. It's because we changed from a magazine to a newspaper. We've changed sizes. We started with a print run of 1 million copies. We're now sitting in We're now sitting at 850,000 per edition. But then we changed from 1 million to 1.1 to 1.6 per edition to 1.7. But then, because now we split that 1.7 million copies into two, because we wanted to come out twice a month, because we want to make sure that you get fresh content.